Good. Good evening. Thank you for the diehards who came out tonight. This is awesome. 5 minutes for politicians. That's a lifetime. This is fantastic. I'm going to hear the 3 B's of public speaking. Be brief, be impactful, be gone. So we'll start real quick. Scott Hilton running for House District 48. That encompasses Peachtree Corners, Johns Creek, Alpharetta, and Roswell. Unfortunately, you're not in it here. You're south of Vice Road. You'll be in the 48th. I'll go back real in time here. My great-great-uncle is from Middle Georgia. So I've got red clay in my blood. I was actually named after him. Clifford Bateman was an entrepreneur and a farmer and figured out a way to freeze peaches and put them on railroad and ship them all across the country. So that's kind of my roots here. My grandfather then started a newspaper company in Georgia. So we go way back. I grew up in Kansas, went to school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. They needed one kid from Kansas, so I checked that box. And then met my beautiful wife there. We went to Philadelphia. I worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer, so got to learn all about what media is like. And we were fortunate enough to come down to Georgia in 2005. I was looking to get my MBA. Emory had a 1-year program and went to Emory, did that, and got out into banking in 2006. I mean, if you had a heartbeat, we were giving you a loan if you could sign a piece of paper. Did banking for the better part of 15 years, very successful career there, and really wanted to kind of carve out a career before life in public service. In 2016, I was approached by our current representative, Tom Rice at the time. He said, Scott, you've done a ton of great work in the community. I'd love to see you run. And he retired after a 20-year career, endorsed me, and we were off to the races. And so served in the General Assembly for 2 years, got a lot of great stuff done, some really good bipartisan bills, cut your taxes, expanded charter schools in the state. Really proud of our work. Unfortunately, when 2018 rolled around, that was Trump's first, that was his midterm election. And we saw a pretty big change across the state, including this area here. And there was a change in the guard in 2018. And so I'll never forget, I was at the YMCA having the Charlie Brown moment. I just got the football kicked out. And the governor called and said, Scott, you're really good. We need you back. And so he asked me to lead the Georgians First Commission. And that commission was established to cut red tape in state government for the benefit of small business. And just an unbelievable opportunity. And really at the end of the day, after about 18 months of crisscrossing the entire state listening to small business, we put together pretty much a 100-page policy proposal for the governor to put in place. A good chunk he's done already. Another good chunk he'll do in his second term here. But the honor of a lifetime to work for the governor. So in terms of experienced candidates in this race, you've got someone who's a former legislator, a finance guy, worked in state government, so know things inside and out, so that day one, if you're hiring me, I'm going to be effective for you. So the things I'm most passionate about, things I hear from most people, Scott, the economy, I'm getting beat up. My real wages are down, my savings are lost, and I'm afraid there's a recession on the horizon. I'm going to lose my job pretty soon. Number one, I'm going to fight for you and your family on that end. Number two, I hear a lot about public safety. Scott, when we moved to Johns Creek, we moved to Peachtree Corners for the safety aspect. We're seeing a rising crime coming out of Atlanta. What are you going to do to address that? I am always going to have you, the homeowner, in mind and protect you and fully fund our police and make sure they have the tools and resources they need to protect you and your family. And finally, number three, we saw as a result of COVID a huge education gap, achievement gap get created. Third grade test scores are down dramatically, the reading scores, and that really creates a prison to pipeline, and we've got to close that gap immediately. And so not every kid is different, every kid learns differently. I'm going to make sure teachers, parents, and students have the resources they need. So economy, public safety, education. It would be an honor to serve you. Again, Scott Hilton, Georgia State House 48. Thank you.
The incumbent, Mary Robichaud.
So also thank you again for the diehards to be here. So I am Mary Robichaud. I have the honor of serving currently in House District 48. I have served 2 terms. I'm going for my 3rd term. It was, my district was predominantly Roswell and a small sliver of Alpharetta. With redistricting, a lot of things got changed. So the numbers stayed the change, House District 48, but as Scott says, it moved over into picking up more of Alpharetta, Johns Creek, and now into Peachtree Corners, so it's across county lines. So who am I? I am a wife of almost 45 practice here in Fulton County for 35 years, Alpharetta, and then in our current home in Roswell for almost 30 years. I am the proud mother of twin 41-year-old sons. Their birthday was yesterday. So I got to see them for the first time, and when they get that old, sometimes they just don't want to come home. But I got to see them, and I'm the proud grandmother of two beautiful little girls. So they all came in from Savannah to be with us. My background is I am a healthcare executive for over 40 years. I have both clinical background and management in healthcare. And when I decided to run the first time, I'm honest, I came in with no political experience. I decided to run at the age of 62. I said, okay, I'm going to step up and try to see if we can have adult conversations to talk to each other, to solve the problems that we have. Because yelling at each other is not going to work. That's my attitude. So I've always been one to try to talk to people. In my background in healthcare, I had to get doctors and nurses and insurance providers and everybody in a room with a focus on the patient to solve problems. And trust me, when you try to get doctors and nurses to agree, it's difficult, but I'm very good at it. So what I've done is now my focus is on the constituent as my focus. We've had multiple great opportunities. As I said, my husband and I married 45 years. One of my sons actually was born with a congenital heart defect, and he had open heart surgery, multiples, his last one at the age of 35. But, he's always had great health care to cover that. We've had great economic opportunities. We traveled a little bit before we landed here in Georgia. But, obviously, I'm not from Georgia. I am from Louisiana. With a name like Robichaux, maiden name of Guillot. I did grow up in rural Louisiana. My husband's from New Orleans. So when we talk about what do we need, I look at it that we can create win-win situations that we can solve the problems that we have when we talk to each other. I've done that in my 4 years now in the legislature. When you are in the minority party, which is what I am, oftentimes your bills will be picked up and put into Republican bills, and that's wonderful because something gets done. And I've had so far 7 of those done. One of those actually was the first time ever for Fulton County was an educational tax abatement for our senior citizens. So their taxes now are going to come down a little bit on their school property taxes. So we're starting that process. I've done a few other things. One of the other ones I'm very proud of. Georgia was the last state that if you were mentally ill and adjudicated by a court of law to put into a hospital, federally your name goes on a list that you cannot buy a gun for 5 years. Georgia was the last state that technically after 5 years your name just came off. We've changed that law, and I worked on that for 4 years. So now you do have the right to get your rights to own a gun, but you now have to go before a court of law and prove you're no longer going to be a danger to yourself or to others before you can get that right back because the court found you mentally ill, kind of thing. I've done some other things mainly in healthcare, some stuff around telemedicine, some things about expanding nurse practitioners and capabilities as we look to the workforce healthcare crisis that we're having. So those are the kinds of things I work on.
Mary, stay right there. You're up next. Okay, first question is, do you support casinos in Georgia? Mary's first.
Casinos? I actually do support casinos with local control. I think there should be a limited number, and I think then it's going to be up to the local municipalities in the areas if they want the casinos in their communities. That would be fine with me. I don't think we should force it on anyone. I think there should be no more than 5 or 6 across the state. So, yes, I do. I think the financial revenues we would get from that, the opportunities that we have there. We have an opportunity, I've already started working with a group so that in these casinos, what we would try to do is also put a certain percentage of all products sold in the casinos would have to be made by a Georgia majority company. So things such as even the alcohol, the food, it has to come from Georgia. So I think it would be a great economic opportunity not only for Hope and for other educational needs, but also for the concepts of our small businesses, helping them expand.
Need me to repeat, Scott?
Okay.
Okay.
So Georgia, just a couple weeks ago, earned the recognition once again for the ninth year in a row as the #1 state to do business. Why in the world would we go out of our way to recruit casinos when we can bring in the next fintech company, the next healthcare company, the next insurance company? There is absolutely no reason we ought to be chasing down casinos. The facts prove over and over again casinos are a hub for crime and criminal activity and sex trafficking. There is absolutely no way that I would want to recruit and bring this into our state. It just doesn't make any money, tax revenue we would make off of it. We would lose hand over fist, helping to make up for all the societal costs of addiction to gambling. Again, the criminal activity, the sexual human trafficking, absolutely not to be a stain on Georgia. We have casinos close enough in other states that if that's something you want to enjoy, you can go to Florida, North Carolina, Alabama, wherever. But absolutely no, I would not support that in Georgia. Thank you.
Scott, stay there. Turn on. If Fulton County and the 15 cities within Fulton County cannot agree on the allocation of lost funds, Senator Albers says that he will handle it through legislation. How will you address the issue if you're elected?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've got a pretty educated audience here on what lost is and what's happening right now. But essentially, the cities are negotiating a gun to their head with the Fulton County in regards to lost revenue. And I hope it doesn't come to that. It speaks volumes when you have 15 cities, Republican, Democrat-led, who are all in opposition to what the county is doing right now. So, again, yes, if it does come to that, I will certainly step up to address it. Again, highlighting kind of differences. I've been down there. I've been able to get things done. So it's not just words on paper, on video. It's actions. And so between Senator Albers, who's a good friend of mine, myself on the House side, we will rectify this if it needs rectifying. Again, at the end of the day, I hope reasonable heads prevail. Leadership steps up. And again, a Democrat-run Fulton County who is trying to squeeze every juice it can out of the cities for what? It's untenable, unacceptable. And absolutely, I would step up and lead that effort down in the House. You can trust me to do that. Thank you.
You need me to repeat her?
No.
Okay.
I agree. We do have to be careful, though, with the lost funds. It expires in December. So if they cannot come to a resolution in December in the legislature, we don't have any recourse to fix it this year. So yes, we would all be fixing it. I also work with John Albers to look at ways in which we're fixing it. He and I have met with the county commission to see where we could possibly intervene as to what's going on. Why do they need additional resources? And being realistic, less than 2% of I think 0.2% is now still covered by Fulton County that these funds can be used for. And yes, it does pay for things such as our jail and our judicial system. But when they came in with that type of 35% increase, it was absolutely ridiculous. Now again, we have to remember on both sides, on the negotiating team, it's bipartisan from both the county commission and the mayors. So people are trying to work it out. Barry Fleming, who I had the privilege of serving with also, he's actually being a facilitator, trying to get them to talk. Because we have to solve it before December 31st, or we lose that money. And our cities cannot. I think some of the things we're going to need to fix immediately is when they can start negotiating. Apparently the law was put in place 20 years ago. They couldn't start negotiating it until June 1st. July 1st. So, city budgets are already set. So we have to, we should be obviously starting those negotiations much earlier than that.
You're right there. Number 3. Okay. Do you support school choice?
School choice in where?
That's all it says. Do you support school choice? So I guess it's vouchers or something.
Okay. I do not support 100% school vouchers. What I look at is I believe that we have a great public charter school system, we need to fund that more, to give those opportunities for students. I think there might be some special needs that we have to address. When I looked at, we called up the school board in Fulton County, and on day one, approximately 10% of our students already are in either private schools or homeschool. So when we talk about school vouchers and the concept of whatever money, say it's the $10,000 people talk about, would follow the child, on day one, Fulton County School System loses $100 million with absolutely zero reduction in services, with absolutely no additional children leaving the system yet. I would ask, how are we going to make that up? What programs are we going to cut and adjust when you talk about $100 million day one? So I do not support school vouchers for those programs.
Yes, I absolutely support school choice. I think if we learned anything from COVID, is that these policies where your kid stays at home and they can't go to school and they've got to wear a mask and they've got to learn off Zoom absolutely does not work. Kids have been set far behind. Not every kid is built the same way. Every kid is absolutely different. It needs to be taught however they need to be taught. The parents need to be in control of that decision, parents in consultation with the teachers, and whatever environment, whatever tools they need, absolutely, we ought to give you, the taxpayer, that money to figure out how you want to do that best. And I don't think it needs, there's sort of this false equivalent that it's an either-or thing. It doesn't need to be an either-or thing. We can continue to fully fund our public schools while at the same time giving our parents all the choice they want, whether it's charter school, opportunities to homeschool or expand the programs for those with special needs. We absolutely have to give parents the tools they need to educate their kids. So, again, I think this is kind of the biggest philosophical difference that we have, so that if we're fortunate we go down there, in terms of our voting record, that's going to be a pretty big difference. If you want someone who's going to stand up for you and say, you know what, let me put the power back in your hand, you do what you want to with your tax dollars. It's not the government's money, it's your money, and it's not our decision, it's your decision. So if that's somebody who you want to see representing you, I would certainly ask for your vote, definitely on education. Thank you.
Okay, Scott. Is there a problem with open borders, or do you feel that it is closed and safe?
It's a good question if I was running for Congress. I appreciate the question. Georgia, as far as I know, doesn't border any foreign countries, but more broadly, yes, it is absolutely a problem. We're seeing it nationally. The issues that it's causing, we're seeing fentanyl just pour across the border. We're seeing folks that we have no idea pour across the border. It's absolutely a problem nationally. What is that doing here in Georgia? Again, we're seeing a spike in drug overdoses, and yes, at a national level, I hope folks deal with that and pay attention to it and do something about it. I think you're going to see a big change politically, nationally here in Georgia, or nationally because of the open borders. And yeah, in Georgia, you can trust that I will fully do whatever is in my power to make sure that we are enforcing law and order here in our state. I don't think we need to be turning a blind eye to laws that are on the books. And so I find it amusing, some of these sanctuary states and cities who are now crying out, we've got a crisis on our hands when, Florida, Texas, and other states have had a crisis for a number of years because of these broken national policies. And so, yes, I will do what I can at a state level to make sure our laws are enforced and our children are kept safe from the onslaught of drugs that are coming across the border. We've got to do more from that perspective. So thank you for the question.
So I would agree, obviously it's a national issue. I think we need 100% total overhaul of our immigration system. We know we need workers to come in. Some of them are farm workers. They come in on certain visas. Those systems themselves are broken. They're broken. We have people who are bringing in workers who should not be here to work in different parts of our state and others. So I think we do need to fix these things, but it is a national issue from my perspective, and I would encourage the federal government to fix those issues, come up with an overhaul of the immigration system. I do think we need to decide those people who are waiting in their home countries to come into this country. How can we move that along faster? Some of the people who supported us in Afghanistan and Iraq, these are people who supported our country. I think we should be able to allow people like that to come in for issues. Our workers, we know we are having a worker shortage, and so we need those workers to come into the state.
Okay. What do you expect to accomplish, and how do you plan to do it in this term, if you win?
So a couple of things that I would like to accomplish, and I think we're at that precipice, is I would like to see Medicaid fully expanded. The president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, a couple of weeks ago at a meeting, he said healthcare is infrastructure. We need to fix our healthcare system here in Georgia. There's a lot of reasons why we need to fix it when we have 500,000 people plus who are not covered. They're seeking the most expensive care in emergency rooms. Hospitals are overloaded. They cannot take this anymore. We have those issues. We also have the issues of workforce development. So we need a moderation between the two. I think in this area, again, telemedicine is going to be a big driver of how we can, once we have Medicaid expansion. And when I say Medicaid expansion, I'm also talking about adjusting the reimbursement rate for Medicaid. I'm talking about the concept of allowing nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and others to practice at the highest level of their capability so that we have enough healthcare providers to treat people where they are. So I think we can fix these things, and I think what we're seeing now with a lot of business support coming back for the concept of Medicaid expansion. We also know when we have people who can get preventative medicine, they're more productive in their workplace. Most studies show it's a 1 to 2% productivity increase minimum. And that's what we need right now. We need higher productivity.
I'm all good. Yeah, I love the conversation around Medicaid. I know a good bit about it. I actually have a family member of mine, my son, who is a recipient of Medicaid, and who should be one. It's originally designed for single mothers and those with disabilities, and now we want to expand it to able-bodied adults. Why I think the conversation around Medicaid is so fascinating is you saw Republican-led Governor Brian Kemp expand Medicaid with work requirements, and the Democratic Party said no. We want a completely free handout without any kind of strings attached. And so it's kind of feels like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth when they say, we want to expand Medicaid. We did it, and y'all blocked it, So there's two numbers I want you to remember: 5 and 0. 5 and 0. 5 bills offered, 0 passed, 0 Republican co-sponsors. That's what we've had for the last 4 years. It's time for change. We've got to have someone down there who can get things done. The number one thing that I'm going to do is this. People need relief. We've got $6 billion excess money, of your money, in our state coffers right now. The only thing we're constitutionally required to do or have to do is pass a budget. And I'm going to pass a budget down there that puts more money back in your pocket, because this is the issue right now. Knocking on the guy's door today, he says, half my neighborhood has had to move because property taxes have gone up. Scott, have I seen that money? No. Yes, my house today is worth this yesterday, this today, and my taxes have doubled. I don't see any of that money, I'm having to pay. And so folks need property tax relief. That is the number one thing that I'm going to work on when I get down there, is putting more money back in your pocket. Thank you.
Okay. Freedom is a buzzword that gets used a lot. Can you explain what it means to you and how you would balance individual freedom against the common good?
He's a good friend of mine. He has a quote in his office, and I think it's great. It says, bigger the government, smaller the citizen. And that's what freedom is to me. It's getting government out of the way to allow you, the citizen, to live, enjoy, prosper. That's what it meant to our founders of our country. I think they would all be aghast if they saw what was going on right now with the multiple layers of government that we have that really oppress people. For me, and this goes back to kind of a number 2 issue, if I had one, of what I would do down there, we have built a regulatory code in Georgia. Now, this is not bills that we pass. That's your statutory code. This is the 82 agencies of state government and the rules and regulations that they've passed that have been completely unchecked for the better part of 50 years. So what I want to do is get in there, and in that regulatory code, 109,000 times it says you may not, shall not, must not, cannot. That's what I want to attack day one. Because every one time I delete a word that says may not, must not, shall not, that's more freedom back to you, the citizen. And that is absolutely what I'm going to be laser focused on. And time after time when I was down here before, there were so many bills that we passed that took more freedom away from you. The most dangerous time in Georgia is when the General Assembly is in session. So when I'm down there, I'm looking to restore your freedom and to block things and take it away from you. Thank you.
So freedom to me means that we are all able to live our best lives. I think that's where we all need opportunities. Some of us have had different types of opportunities. I would like to see us working to make sure everyone has given opportunities to succeed. I think that's where we as a country, we are a country of immigrants. That's who the United States of America is. My family came over in the 1600s from actually France. So, many of us are not original people here. And freedom means that our families chose to come to this country for a better life. And working together, we can get that. I agree with Scott, some of the regulations are hilarious to me also. When I looked at the things such as special license plates, I think it's ridiculous that we have to have a law that has to be voted on in the State House to get a special license plate that goes to charity. Now, I understand the concept of regulation, but I think that should just be, let's set, what are the rules, DMV manage it. We don't need to be spending our time in the State House voting on those kinds of things. I agree with you there. So that's what I think of as freedom.
Okay. Mary, would you support the elimination of state income tax? If so, how would you replace the lost income to balance the state budget?
Well, as you know, we're reducing the state income tax. So we're doing it in a very measured manner. It was voted on this past year. So it's going to start to reduce down with a review every year or so to make sure we're doing that. So ultimately, if we get to the point of overall tax, not property taxes, but sales tax and other things that are there, I could support it, but I think it's got to be a gradual. It cannot be a day one concept. We're going to go, down to a 4.99 in a few years. We're going to see where that settles out with the government, with our budget. As you know, when we hit COVID, what we had to do was, and I was there during COVID, we had to reduce all budgets by 10%. It was across the board. We didn't know what was coming, to be honest. No one did. So we reduced the entire state budget by 10%. Luckily, we've had more income. At the same time, we did pass a tax on, if you buy stuff online, you now have to pay the same sales tax as you would if you go into your local store, trying to support our local entrepreneurs here also. So if you're just buying on Amazon, they don't get the break versus our local store down the street. So that brought in some revenue. And then, of course, we can, some of the stuff, whether or not you agree, monies that has come into the state due to the Recovery Acts, $12.6 billion have come into the state, which I think is great. Governor has used it appropriately in a lot of ways, broadband expansion, the concept of eliminating gasoline tax for now, some other issues we were dealing with in that, trying to make whole businesses. So that's the kind of thing. I would have to see where we are before I could say we could reduce it 100%.
Scott, would you support the elimination of state income tax? If so, how would you replace the lost income to balance the state budget?
Yeah, let me paint a picture real quick before we do that. So we have a candidate running for governor in the Democratic Party right now, Stacey Abrams, who 80% of her money raised is coming from California, New York, and Illinois. If you look at the tax structures there, they're just absolutely out of control. Gavin Newsom ought to win Realtor of the Year. He's got more folks moving to Texas and Georgia than any other state, and it's because of the tax structure we have. So again, the difference between the parties